Would you consider yourself an alpha male?
You idiot! Alpha males don't even exist! The 1970 study that invented alpha wolves got disproven. Get bent, nerd!
Which is an interesting point, but it's ignoring that there are a bunch of other mammals that have alphas, and oh yeah, wolves do have alphas, so let's talk about that. So the story goes, some guy checked out a bunch of wolves in a zoo and saw they were fighting each other, and the ones who fought the best got put in charge. He decides to call it an alpha because scientists love Greek. A couple of decades later, L. David Mech repeats the experiment, and surprise, surprise, he saw the same stuff. This study first brought the myth of the alpha wolf to the limelight, and ironically, it launched Mech's career that would eventually ended. He spent the next decade studying wolves in the far north of Canada, and when he returned, he revealed that they actually function very similarly to humans. In the wild, they form family groups led by the parents or grandparents, and it's only in captivity they resort to gang violence. But that's the thing, the grandfather leading the pack is an alpha male. That's the phrase we use to describe him. Which gets to the meat of the problem. Using the same term for any male leader implies that all animal hierarchies are the same, and they're not. They're so very not. I could make a whole video about how they're not. At least I hope I can. I've only written the first paragraph so far. So, how do you be an alpha? Have lots of children. Alternatively, go to prison and beat people up. If you're going to compare animals to humans, you should probably start with our closest relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos. Chimpanzees on their own could be a whole video. Here's what I'll say. Chimpanzees have a very clear alpha that all the members of the group defer to, but leadership styles differ. Now, the alpha doesn't really rule all by himself. He's the leader of some sort of posse that rules all the other chimps, whether through force or popular support, usually a combination of the two. Now, the traditional view of the alpha in most animals is all about sex, because that's what their entire life is about. But in higher primates, the alpha doesn't get all the women. That's not the point of his position. The women have a hierarchy of their own, led by an alpha female, who gains that position the same way a male does, usually with less force. However, the female hierarchy is looser because the females move around between tribes while the males stay in the same group. So, for chimpanzees, you become an alpha by being the front runner of the most popular coalition. Wait, that's just politics. We have that in humans. Bonobos are a lot like chimpanzees, except female and male are swapped, and the hierarchy is looser overall. And for another thing, this gradient is skewed. I can't get into the specifics of bonobo behavior while keeping this video monetized. Suffice it to say, the circumstances leading to a fight in chimps leads to a sexual encounter in bonobos. This is a friendship thing, but it proves the rule that you have to rule through popular support. So, for bonobos, you become an alpha by being the female with the most loyal and powerful friend group. For a male, you probably have to be one of her sons. These have been getting pretty complicated, so let's go over to the king of beasts himself. No, not Godzilla, he's the king of monsters. The pride is centered around the females, and the males, which is actually a small group of allied males rather than one alpha, are a temporary and interchangeable part. It might even be wrong to say that they're part of the pride. But we're missing a key factor. With wolves, sex predates the hierarchy. With chimps and bonobos, sex doesn't enter into it. But with lions, it's all about sex. Now, males can fight each other all they like, but ultimately it's up to the females to choose. That being said, the females only want the best genes for their children, so they will choose the dominant ones. So when a group of bachelors rolls up, the lionesses are like, oh, sick, I need kids and you can protect them while I'm off hunting. And when the kids are old enough to protect themselves, the male lions roll out. So, how do you become one of them? Well, let's say you're there with a group of friends and you see some ladies and they're like, well, this might be our last chance for a while, so I guess you're up, king. That's how you be an alpha male. Let's talk about walruses. Walruses, and most pinnipeds for that matter, travel in giant groups. Females and males travel in separate groups most of the time, and these are too large and decentralized to have any sort of alpha. That all changes during mating season. When the time for mating comes, the males fight over females. They will kill. Matter of fact, they intend to kill. The walruses they're fighting, anyone who comes between them, heck, they might even kill the female they were fighting over. The largest walrus with the longest tusks will beat back the weaker male and claim himself the alpha, ruling over a territory and a colony of females. He will defend his territory until, again, his children are old enough to defend themselves. Now, this overly simplistic dominance hierarchy with men duking it out to claim the females is pretty much the default pattern for alphas. All across the animal kingdom, the general rule is that you become an alpha by fighting all the other males to impress the females. Now, I know what you're thinking. What if, when the alpha isn't paying attention, I sneak in and impregnate a female? Good plan, but it's more complicated than it looks, because if the alpha finds out, he will just beat the female until she miscarries. You need to be undetected. You need a disguise.
Don't worry though, I've got just the thing. He'll never expect it.
Salmon are well known for just kind of giving up and dying if they can't reproduce in the exact same space as their parents. When they do get there, however, it's a bloodbath. Salmon reproduce through a method called spawning, where they spray out all the gametes and, see what happens. This leads to the females laying all the eggs and the males playing a giant game of control point to see who gets to pass on their genes. There are two main strategies. When most salmon are ready for mating, they transform into this thing, which lets all the other males know, "I'm going to kill you." So the hook-nosed salmon can go and fight each other, and while they're doing that, the jacks, who disguise themselves as females, sneak in and mate. Now this strategy is not perfect. For one thing, you still have to be somewhat stealthy, which bars off a lot of area. Now as the strategy is running, you have to compete with other jacks, and once you're done, there's always the chance a hook-nose just comes in and overrides you. So you either need more or better sperm, which they do, to great success. This idea of a sneaker male that uses female mimicry is not unique to salmon, so really you have two options to become an alpha male: kill them all, or become a femboy. Now, to some of you, this may be sparking a memory of this meme you saw a couple of years ago, so let's talk about those rock, paper lizards. Rock, paper lizards! So the side-blotched lizard Utta stansburiana has two of the familiar archetypes. The orange-throated males compete with others for control of territory and females, and the yellow-throated males are sneakers who use female mimicry. That leaves the blue-throated males. The blue-throated males have a more intensive focus on a singular female. They aren't dominant enough to beat out an orange male, but with only one female to keep track of, they'd have to be pretty unobservant to lose her to a yellow-throated male, especially since they forge alliances with other blue-throated males. So, a triangle: mage, warrior, rogue. Fighting dark psychic. To be an alpha lizard, you either need to kill everyone, become a femboy, or have an intense relationship with one specific woman and friendships with other males, which is just kind of how the human social structure works. But we've been getting too abstract. Let's go back to a rigid social hierarchy, that of the naked mole rats. Naked mole rats practice something called eusociality, which is unique to them and some insects. Essentially, the system says that one female is responsible for all of the breeding. Yes, she's always a female, so boys, you'll have to click off this video early. This part's not for you. So another hallmark of eusociality is polymorphism. Organisms that belong to the same species have drastically different anatomies based on which caste they belong to, and the queen is no different. She starts off no different from many other workers, but the first one to claim queen status exudes a pheromone that prevents other females from giving birth or becoming the queen. And so it begins. Whenever a naked mole rat becomes pregnant, her vertebra discs separate slightly. As the queen constantly gives birth, her body stretches up to twice as long as a worker. She uses that size to beat any potential threats to her rule, but it's still possible for a coup to take place. Now, this whole arrangement is pretty unique to the naked mole rat, but we can see hints of it elsewhere. In some fish, being a female is the default, but once there is a female, she can release pheromones that prevent the males from becoming female. Being the only female, she's obviously the alpha. Termites are similar to naked mole rats, but they also have a male who's doing the same thing. So, how do you become an alpha female? Force all other nearby women to take birth control. Retain any and all baby weight after pregnancy until you become a monstrous heap of flesh that crushes any and all threats to your tyrannical rule. So, like in the movie Norbit. Now, not all you social animals have the same social structure. Bees are much nicer. The queens are identical to the workers in every way, except that the queens are fed royal jelly, which allows them to develop the size and ovaries necessary to reproduce. So, I guess to be an alpha female, you need to take a bunch of steroids, an FSH and LH, and maybe prolactin, and probably oxytocin. Then you need to spend the rest of your life in a state of constant pregnancy. Yeah, you're definitely going to need that oxytocin. For a long time, we thought wasps were the same, that some sort of switch could be turned on. Turns out no, in wasps you're either born that way or you aren't. So to be an alpha female, you just gotta get lucky. So, what? What do we learn? Well, a lot of the time, being an alpha is all about doing whatever it takes to get the attention and approval of women, which in humans we call being a pick-me or simp. Additionally, females are more often than not the larger and more powerful ones, so the traditional view of the alpha male doesn't really seem to have any basis in biology. Maybe you should just call yourselves big guys or something.